Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Callum Sully podcast. This is season 2, and I am with my guest, Karl de Leeuw. And we are going to be talking about a lot of amazing things. More importantly, we're going to be talking a lot about his book, The Healthspring Code, and some of the benefits that are going to come from that. We're going to talk a little bit about asthma. For my asthmatic listeners, this is going to be a good one for you, because this is quite close to my heart since I've suffered with it since I was a baby. And we're going to be talking about a lot more things as well, nutrition, minerals, stuff like that. So, Karl, how are you doing, my friend?
Fine, Colin. I'm here in Dublin, Ireland, and for some reason today is not as warm as yourself in Manchester.
I live in a little town called Buxton, which is just south of Manchester. And we are the highest town in England, the highest market town in England. We should not be feeling this level of heat. So I can't have my window open because it'll pick it up on the episode. So I have to sit here dripping. But it's all in the greater good of the episode.
Oh, very good. So you're doing your exercises while we're talking.
Yeah, pretty much. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Karl, and just give our listeners a bit of an idea of what you're currently doing in the world.
Okay, so my background is I'm a chartered quantity surveyor for 30 years, but I went from quantity surveying into property, and then I was in Twickenham, London, ex-wife, 3 kids, and then we moved to Dublin, Ireland, invested in many countries, quite a few countries, UK, Slovakia, Poland, and South Africa, and then Ireland. Moved over to Ireland with my family, and this is all 2005, before the August 2007 subprime crash. It only really hit the UK in 2008. In any case, invested heavily in property, and I lost everything. Property values fell between 50 and 80% after subprime. Right. And the bank pulled the plug. I was developing. So I had an unfinished building. And I've gone from, if I sold the property finished before subprime, I would have made €2 million in it. And that one property then meant I owed the bank 3-4 years later, with interest and everything, €2 million. And that pulled me under financially, and that woke me up. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have written 3 books. And the 3 books are the Dyslexia Code, I'm dyslexic, the Universe Code, it's all about world peace and the truth, and the one we're discussing today, the Healthspring Code. And it's via Dyslexia Code, because in dyslexia studies, they take dyslexic people, some studies, off lactose in milk and glutens in wheat and stuff like that, and then they improve through functional tests. And then, so that Dyslexia Code took me 6 months to research, and then I knew I had to research nutrition. And because I had no idea about nutrition, it was a massive advantage, because I could start a clean slate. And I had another advantage. Dyslexic people use the right side of the brain. Non-dyslexic use the left. I've got studies to prove that now, which is sort of the main thing of my Dyslexia Code book. So I used that plus synchronicity, and it took me six months of research, where the Universe Code, which is my biggest book, took me 7 years of research.
Right. Wow. So quite a bit. And was it, talk to me about, we'll get into the Healthspring Code, because that's sort of the main thing that we're talking about on today. But what sort of inspired you to do book number 1 and then 2? Was you always a plan were these books, were you planning to do this many, or was it literally the first one came and you thought, hang on a minute, that led to more and more?
Yes, I never set out to write a book. After I started with the dyslexia, as I mentioned, my daughter was taken out of class, and I said to my then wife, we need to get her back into the class. She was taken to the learning support teacher. And then I researched dyslexia. And then after what I found, I had 2 small events in Dublin. Not a lot of people came, but it was very successful. And people asked me for notes. So I started writing notes. And that was the start. I didn't know it at that stage of my first book. Then I left the notes. I was then interested in nutrition, and that was the start of nutrition. And then I met a guy called John DeMartini. He's got an event in different places in the world, but I went to one in Houston, Texas. It's called Master Planning for Life, where for 3 days you plan your life. And 2,000 questions, 200 other people in the room, everyone's sitting with their laptop. And while planning my life, it sort of spiritually came that I want to uncover the mystery of the universe and thereafter tell the world. And at that stage, which is my universe book, I didn't know I was going to write a book. And I achieved it. Uncovering the mystery of the universe in 2017. And now I'm in the phase where I want to start getting it out in a big way to the world.
Right. Amazing. And, you mentioned about nutrition. What was it about nutrition that sort of, for you, was like, hang on a minute, there's a connection here between that and dyslexia?
Yes, as mentioned, in the dyslexia studies, they take dyslexia people off lactose and milk and glutens, and then they improve massively. But then I saw nutrients feed the brain, and you've got the blood-brain barrier that, and that's what that it passes that. And I knew I had to start discussing nutrition, research nutrition. And then when I started researching nutrition, I was just flabbergasted with what I found. Right. Because I found that kids don't eat in the hospitals. It's a complete fallacy, other than through accidents. And I'm all into medicine for if you have accidents or something like that. But we can live completely disease-free, and kids don't need to be in hospital. So today's discussion is asthma, because you're an asthma sufferer, and I used to be an asthma sufferer. Right. But it's also all other diseases. And I'm going to particularly refer to osteoporosis, multiple sclerosis, and cystic fibrosis as well.
It's interesting, isn't it, that over in America, this is a big thing, right? And the holistic approach, the connection between diet, what's going on in your gut, tends to be a big problem with what you're suffering. It does seem in the UK or in Ireland that it does seem to be a bit behind in that sort of way. We're still in this era of, oh no, everything here's a pill, go on medication, take this. And it's like, I've always been a big believer that your body can heal itself. It's usually a sign that we're not treating it very well. So for me, and I'm sure this is something that you will know more about, but here's what I did, because my conditions, and you said before, it's not just about asthma, it's many different conditions. So the conditions that I experience are all atopic, right? So we're talking asthma, we're talking eczema, and we're talking hay fever. All inflammatory, sort of atopic-based allergies, basically. And I suffered with them for years, and I tried everything. And I mean everything: creams, steroid creams, ointments, all these different things from a pharmacy, right? And nothing were working. Now, one day, my wife and my daughter, they watched the Game Changers documentary, right? Which was on Netflix. Now, they come running down, they'd watch it, like, right, that's it, I'm never eating meat again. I thought, what? Why? So, for ethical reasons, I was contemplating trying it anyway. So that day, we literally stopped eating meat. Okay, I would suggest probably about within the next few days, my asthma and my skin gone, cleared up, and this went on for a good year, even through winter, when it's usually bad, even through summer when my eczema tends to be quite bad. If I show you my skin now, there's not one spot of eczema. Now, I'm not saying there was a direct link, but I am kind of saying there was a direct link, because I had tried everything. I tried eliminating milk, I tried putting creams on, all this stuff. So what do you think that was, Carl? Do you think that ties into what you're saying? Is it a case of that I was putting something in my body that was causing me harm to have these sort of conditions, or was it a lack of minerals? Was it, was I just spending years just putting creams and hoping for the best and moisturizing, which just made it even itchier? Or was it what I thought it was?
Okay, so the three things that trigger that showed up your symptoms. There's a cause and then there's a symptoms, and medicine now treat the symptom with medicine. Your symptoms is exactly the same as mine. Asthma, eczema, and hay fever. The two times I lived in Teddington in London, and Teddington certainly 10, 15 years ago used to be the biggest asthma suffer rate of any place in the whole of the UK, because it was like in a basin next to the River Thames. And both times I ended up in hospital with asthma attack and had to go to nebulizer. It kicked off when the hay fever pollen count was very high. And during the day, it just got worse and worse, and I ended up in hospital. And I used to have eczema as well. And my daughter used to have eczema. And then this is actually my dyslexic daughter. And then when we put these ointments on her, it was because ointments got steroids in it, a lot of them. I knew that is keeping what she wants to let out of her body even more in. So, and we tried all kind of different things. So to your question, yes, it is all about meat, dairy, and eggs and pesticides.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm basically going to discuss today. So I wrote the book, The Universe Code, 21 chapters. Currently, it's 99 pence on Amazon. And the reason I believe, and also the foremost PhD nutritionist in the UK, I believe is in the world, also believe that meat, dairy, and eggs and pesticides create all diseases. It is just your genes. So this is just the theory. It is your genes that dictate what disease you get. But the cause of all. Now, my asthma disappeared within 9 months. I sort of didn't test it on day one. It might have changed within a day or month, but I sort of just say it because a lot of people want to switch something on and off, and they want to see immediate reaction. I would say to anyone, give at least 9 months plus, and see the difference it will make in your body. So I could start, if you're interested, discussing the main points from my book and why I believe it's meat, dairy, and eggs and pesticides.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's get into the book, the new book. Let's get into why, because I'm interested, and I know, obviously, with this being a fitness podcast, a lot of my listeners suffer not even just with asthma, but just general, a lot of the conditions you've mentioned before. So, yeah, let's get into the book. So tell me those points.
Yeah. So just before getting into that, it's interesting because the first time I'm having a podcast with someone that's a gym owner, fitness owner, and I know from having gone to the gym a lot, there will be a lot of people in the gym that will be meat, dairy, and egg consumers. So it's obviously quite a touchy topic. And some people get offended about it. The other thing is that the problem with all of this is even if you go, as I'm suggesting, you go vegan, which is vegan plus fish. Now, there's a reason vegan in the long run is the right way, but I don't promote vegan, and I'm going to discuss it. Although I think it's good, there's a problem with vegan. But I assume a lot of your people in your gym that went, say, vegan or vegetarian would be using a lot of minerals and a lot of additives. And that is a big problem because a lot of vegans pump themselves full of mineral and vitamins. Yeah. And half of mineral and vitamins are made by the drug companies, which is not good stuff. Because your body doesn't know what it is. Although it sort of helps you, it's like a medicine. It helps you, but it does something else to your body. And then half the other minerals that maybe come from plant food, nature doesn't elementize. It doesn't take just vitamin A or calcium on its own. It needs to dance together. So what I'm going to be discussing today is sort of very much the holistic approach and the way that I've got two studies that I'm going to mention today.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see what you think of it. Okay, so very early on in my research, I bumped into the Hunza cuts, Hunzakuts, and they were in northern Pakistan.
Okay.
And they lived completely disease-free until the mid-1960s. And then after that, they built a superhighway to them, and they got all kind of diseases. So they're not disease-free anymore. But fortunately, 4 books were written about them. And in my 21 chapters, I use information of the 4 books. One of them was a US doctor that lived with it for 7 years to try and find out how they lived disease-free. Then I researched the other 7 longevity nations that currently in the world. And the Chinese in China and the Okinawas in Japan. Now, they all eat seafood as well, where the Hunzakuts didn't eat seafood that I could find. But, and now the interesting thing of all these diseases, all these longevity nations, is that what they didn't have in their diet is meat, dairy, and eggs. The Hunzakat had small amount of meat over winter months because they ran out of fruit and veg, and they had no refrigeration. So, and they're all organic. So that is the 4 biggest things. And it's not only meat, it's meat, dairy, eggs, and then pesticides. So what I'm promoting is a vegan diet. So a pescatarian is vegetarian and fish, a vegan is vegan plus fish, and 70% organic. Now, what is how does it work? Well, it's all about pH. Before that, so Louis Pasteur was a very prominent guy, very rich in the late 19th century. And that's why we've got pasteurization. That's why we've got medicine. And that's all good. Antoine Béchamp, Bechamp, he was a friend, his compatriot, quiet guy, not wealthy. And he said it's all in the terrain. Louis Pasteur said, it's the germ theory. The germ attacks you. Antoine Béchamp said is, if your body is non-toxic, you cannot get disease. And on Pasteur's deathbed, his son found notes to say where Pasteur said, Béchamp got it right. It's all in the terrain. So although I'm promoting, and I say it, and I get slack from people, in my vaccination chapter, I'm saying if you're on meat, dairy, and egg and pesticides, you have to be vaccinated. But I don't get vaccinated because I'm in the 0.5% that's on a diet that I cannot get diseases. I cannot get COVID. I would like to prove it in the future. I've had PCR tests and I haven't got COVID, but so it's all in the terrain. Now, before discussing pH, any comments so far?
No, I find it interesting. I mean, I know what you're saying. That as a gym owner, I do have a lot of meat eaters. I've told them all before, particularly asthmatics that I've worked with online and in person. I never, a bit like yourself, I will tell people, but I'll never say, "Oh, this is what you have to do." I'll say, "Look, this worked for me," and I'll say, "Look, try it." So you mentioned before, Segan, I am a pescatarian, so I still eat fish. And I do strongly believe that that's what fixed my asthma, my eczema. I think it was that switch to that diet. They're not fully gone, so I imagine there's still more I could be doing, which I'll probably learn from you. But for me, it was an instant change. And you say up to 9 months. I'm 2 years in now, and I still haven't had an asthma attack. Sometimes I might get a bit more out of breath, but I think that's more due to my lack of fitness during lockdown than it is anything to do with my asthma. Now, you mentioned, obviously, we want to get the elephant out of the room and we'll talk about COVID. So do you think then that that's because it's the whole "my body is a temple" stigma? It's been around for a long time. It's that if it's your immune system. If you're looking after the temple, which is your body, you cannot be penetrated by anything that is going to cause you any harm. Would you say that that's where we're going with this? It's that actually our diet, because that would tie into the fact that if people are overweight or unhealthy, carrying large amounts of body fat, not looking after themselves, they are more likely to get the virus because of that reason. So I suppose that ties in with that as well, right?
Absolutely. Well, when we're going to discuss pH, I'll get into the meat of things, or the fish of things, I should say. But most people are more interested in the fuel they put in their car than what they put into their body.
Yeah.
So absolutely. What you put into your body is it. So it's my book, I've got 21 chapters, is all about explaining why it's meat, dairy, and eggs, and pesticides. Pesticides, if you just take pesticides on its own, the longevity nations don't have pesticides, they're organic. Pesticides get trapped in your body. So anything that's non-organic, and this is where fish is good, all fish from the sea or from rivers that's not farmed is organic. And even it's still 1,000 times better, even though people say the small amount of plastics now in the sea and stuff, it's still 1,000 times better than meat, dairy, and eggs. So it is all about, people don't want to do the hard yards. A lot of people say, and it's fair enough, they say, listen, I just want to enjoy myself in this lifetime. And that's fair enough. But the only problem is, because you're enjoying yourself, you are keeping kids in hospitals that have that pain. I can just visualize all these kids, I'm not talking about accidents, just through the wrong foods, meat, dairy, and eggs, and pesticides, they end up in hospitals. Right. Now, I've got an asthma study that's starting now soon, on the last Saturday of this month. And hopefully some of your listeners that's asthmatic or will join this. And it's all about proving this now. So I've been trying to get, for 10 years, to get the universities in the UK, US, and Ireland to back it. I got close twice, and then every time they go away, and I think they won't go away, they just don't go back to me, is that they discover that drug companies pay for the research. So I'm now starting with a pilot study on my own, because we need to get this out there, that no one has to suffer from any disease, never mind asthma. Asthma is an easy one because you don't have to take anyone off medication. Yeah. People can still walk around with their Ventolin pump and that's it. But it's literally, the biggest finding I've got is people don't want to go the hard yards.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people don't want to change anything that they've known for so long. And you mentioned, obviously, from kids, we have this diet, this diet sort of forced on us. Not forced, but, it's just the culture that we're in these days. And that's a long time, right? All the way until, let's face it, realistically, we're, a young adult or a late adult where we decide we want to make a change. Do you think by that point there's a lot of damage already done to the body for so many years of just because, things like bacon and eggs, this is a thing all for everyone growing up. This just becomes the norm. So is it literally as simple as just stop doing it?
Yes. You just stop doing it. But it's, the other thing I must say, it's people not doing the long yards, but it's also people not understanding it. Now, I can't change anyone's mind. Yeah. And, I've got two close friends in South Africa. One is a butcher. I will never get him to, maybe I will, but he's a butcher. And South Africans are one of the biggest meat consumers, meat and egg consumers. My stepfather gave us eggs in the milk that we things. And, as you know, South Africans take biltong to rugby matches. And so one of my friends, I don't think I'll be able to change his mindset. So it might have to come through younger kids, and that this comes out and the study shows it. But either you get it or you don't. And I just hope people get it. It's something maybe like the Game Changers, that they listen to that. And, just for people that listening, the Game Changers is the Roman gladiators. They discovered they were vegetarians because if you put the bones and the flame is a certain color, then they know whether it's a meat eater or not.
Yeah.
But there's a problem with that as well. Why haven't we got why are vegetarians not strong people? Why are vegans not strong people? Because this is a problem. And my belief is, my theory is, it's all about the minerals.
Right.
When you pass over, apparently all that's left if you get cremated is minerals. Right. Minerals is the most important thing. So out of minerals, vitamins, water, carbs, fats, protein, minerals is the most important thing. And the longevity nations got between 20 and 100 times the mineral in their foods.
Yeah.
So this is my first study. It's called the Minerals and Plants Study. I've been trying now for a year to get it off the ground, and I'm getting closer now. And what we're doing is I've discovered 2 places in the world that's high in the 4 alkaline minerals, right, which is sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. And I'm going to discuss pH afterwards and why that's important. And so we're importing into Ireland what they call mineral-rich soil that's high in those 4 alkaline minerals. But I've got huge issues because when you import soil from abroad, it needs to be done under circumstances. So I'll have to do it at the university. So that's my obstacle now. Yeah. And then I'm linking it to structured water. So structured water mimics water over cobblestones that energizes the minerals, because although you can't see it in water, there's minerals, and it makes it dance together. But basically, there's this massive device. The smaller devices don't work. I've got an industrial device that it's just got balls in it, and it pushes water with a huge flow. It's got like a 2-inch pipe coming in and out, and high pressure, like normal water pressure is 3 bar. I'm going to test it between 10 and 20 bar. And when the water comes out, it's structured. And studies show that the plants grow very differently. So I'm going to mix the 2. And hopefully then the study will show that the plants then absorb more of these 4 alkaline minerals. And that's what I believe, what made the Hunsacuts very different. They were off meat, dairy, egg, and pesticides, but they were, I've got a video in my book showing them at 90 playing volleyball. They just didn't know, they don't know what a heart attack is or a stroke. You have to explain to them, they don't know anything like that. What is cancer? So, yes, so it's a mindset.
Yeah. And I guess that's what ties in when you say it's all in the terrain, right? So would you say that there's geographical connections there as well then? So would you say in certain places where these minerals exist or certain places where they don't because of pollution and stuff, is there a geographical connection? Is it whereabouts in the world you are can also have a play on
well, my theory that I want to show through this mineral and plant study is that if you're in a place that's remote where the minerals are still in the soil, because we get 99% of the food consumed comes from agricultural soil that's been completely overfarmed. Yeah. So there's no minerals left because they don't talk about minerals, they don't. So the food we get is so mineral poor. Yeah. The only thing you get with organic food, that's normal organic land that's not in the outback, that maybe got higher minerals, is that you don't get pesticides. That's the only advantage of organic food, which is massive. But it is, 99%, it's completely overfarmed soil, and we don't get the minerals. So then what people do, they go and buy. So vegans miss a lot of minerals, B1 and a lot of other things, iron, and it's all documented. And then they go for supplementation, and supplementation is wrong. So currently the system is completely set up wrong, because even when you go vegan, which you should, it's not right. So that's why I'm promoting a vegan diet which is vegan and fish and organic, 70% organic, because for the next 20 years, because people on meat and eggs, it's an in-between step.
Yeah.
So that's why it's quite critical. So can I get into the meat of things? pH.
Yeah, let's go.
So this is really the crux of it.
Okay.
So the middle of pH is actually 7.365. It's not 7. Above it is alkaline. Below it is acidic.
Yeah.
Meat, dairy, and eggs, before it enters the body, is slightly alkaline, so above 7.365 pH.
Okay.
But they all acidic forming in the body. It's called a Pral score, Pral. So it's like an acid battery. All fruit and veg, whether they lemon, that's say acidic 3 to 4 pH, or broccoli, that's alkaline 8 pH, are all alkaline forming in the body. Okay. It's again called a Pral score. Now, this is where the alkaline industry get it wrong. And I used to have an ionizer. Ionizer is not right, because in nature doesn't make everything alkaline. You need acidity as well. In your stomach and everything, the foods need to be broken down in an acidic environment. And I convinced the former brilliant nutritionist to go from veg, because pH people use ionizer and veg, and go on fruit. The Hunzerputz, that's fruit coming through their ears, not literally, but, and all the longevity nation. So there's nothing wrong with fruit. So it's fruit and veg. So meat, dairy, and eggs is acidic forming in your body. Fruit and veg is alkaline forming body. Now they say about 80% should be alkaline forming. Fish is acidic forming. It's slightly alkaline, but it is acidic forming. But it's okay, because with fruit, veg, and fish, you've got a very good balance. You're about 80% alkaline forming. Now, this is the crux. Our blood, our circulatory system, runs at 7.365 pH.
Right.
If it goes up or down by 0.5 pH, you die. You literally die. There's 3 systems in the body, organs, that regulate the blood to stay within this 0.5 band of 7.365 pH in your blood. And that's the blood itself, your lungs, and your liver.
Okay.
So that is why asthma, I think why asthmatics can reverse their asthma so quickly, because the lungs is one of the systems, and also cystic fibrosis people listening, because it's all about the lungs. Yeah. Now, how does it work? So someone with asthma or cystic fibrosis, something happens in the lungs, because what's one of the systems, it just fixes it. Don't ask me how.
Yeah.
This will have to be proven in future. I'm going to use 3 other examples that's easy to explain. Osteoporosis. So any osteoporosis sufferer, and for non-osteoporotic people, just to explain what osteoporosis is, if you don't know, your body pulls the calcium out of the bones, and therefore the bones become brittle. So you're now putting a meat, dairy, and egg, which is an acidic forming diet, into your body. Your blood has to stay close to 7.365 pH. So what the body does, he says, I have to find alkaline minerals, those 4 alkaline minerals, sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. For gene reasons, it must be gene reasons, because it makes sense. For that particular person, it says, I'm going to get the calcium from the bones. Yeah. And it pulls the calcium from the bones. Okay. And it's also people with myeloma cancer out of intersect, because it's also to do with the bones. And it then says, okay, and it pulls the calcium from the bones, and now it keeps the blood close to 7.365 pH, and you keep on living. But you then get osteoporosis. If you get multiple sclerosis, so when I was researching multiple sclerosis, for those that don't know, it's about the nerves touching each other. So around the nerves, you've got a layer. So it's like a electrical wire that's got a rubber around it, insulating rubber. This myelin sheath is this rubber around it. And this myelin sheath are being worn down, and then the nerves touch each other, crisscross shatter, I think they call it. And even before I researched, I knew the myelin sheath has to be alkaline minerals, and it was 93% alkaline minerals. Don't ask me of those 4 exactly what ones. So for the person with myelin sheath, I know, but it's a more difficult one to prove, that if they go on a meat and egg diet, maybe they have to go for 36 months. The body will our bodies are so plastic. Brain studies show the brain is so plastic. You can rectify things. They say after 7 years of new food, every cell has been completely changed. So I've been on 10 years. I'm a completely different body now. And then the last one is cystic fibrosis, which we've already mentioned. So that is how it works. And that is on your previous question, why is meat, dairy, and eggs so bad for you? It's because of that pH, what's happening in the body. Now, for people with cancer, again, I'm not a medical person, but when I research cell, in the cell is a play. You've got water in and out of the cell, but it's sodium, potassium in and out of the cell. And the sodium and potassium goes in and out of the cell. It's an interplay. So I already know with cancer, because it's all about the atoms and cells, it is that interplay of sodium and potassium. The body is pulling either potassium or sodium, or maybe both, to get the blood close to 7.365 pH. And it's just causing havoc in the cells. Yeah. So when you go on a vegan of fish, and 70% organic diet, and you do it for at least 9 months, you'll start seeing, first of all, if you're a weighty person, you will start losing a lot of weight, and you will just get healthier.
Yeah. Well, definitely a lot to take in, Karl, and I think that when you really break it down into, because you always hear, don't you, about like with the game chasing stuff, it always says there is a link that cutting down meat, dairy, eggs, pesticides would help get rid of these things. But it was good to actually hear you break down exactly why those food groups are causing that problem to begin with, and I'd never really heard that take before on the pH and just when you say it, it kind of it's really interesting to think of. And for me, I guess for me, I was doing that without realizing that that's what I was actually doing. But I like I said, I didn't go straight vegetarian. I went pescatarian because. So do you think that would be the best way, pescatarian, because you're still able to get those things that you would get from meat, like your vitamin Bs, the B12 family, your magnesium, stuff like that, from the fish that you wouldn't be able to get just from taking supplements? Because, as you say, supplements are made. Anything man-made is never going to be great for you anyway. So yeah,
So the on my website, which is Let's Live Longer Now, which is the web address is lllnow.info. So 3 L's and then NOW.info. At the end of it, I've my Irish nutritionist Jess. I paid her like €1,000 or something, and she developed recipes. It's all there for free.
Okay.
But I follow the cheap. I follow the little stroke, the cheapest places. You can do this seriously cheap. And right at the end of the website, first of all, it explains pH there. And right at the end of the website is this diet. And I go into little and I buy anything that's organic. So it's like carrots, apples, bananas now, broccoli, because I know the other foods haven't got more minerals in it. There's other things. Then, but the list is there. Then the superfruits that I don't buy organic, this is why I say 70%, is grapefruit, banana you can get. That's one of the that's organic. In most places now you can get that. avo, and kiwi. So the avo, kiwi, and grapefruit I don't buy organic. No, the kiwi I buy mostly organic now, but not the avo and grapefruit. Grapefruit you can't really get. You can at some places, but avos you can, but they're so expensive. Yeah. So that's why I say 70%. But then I go to the seafood counter, tin fish. Tin fish from the sea is so dirt cheap. Mackerel, tuna. Some little stores do frozen tuna or steaks or salmon and things like that, or tin fish. Yeah. But you'll see the whole diet. So you can really do it really cheaply. And that seafood has got a lot of minerals in it. But another one that's very important is sea salt or Himalayan salt. So I've got chapter 7 on showing why table salt is so bad. So you have to cut out table salt. And please read chapter 7 of the Healthspring Code book. There's a reason why it's so bad. Go organic as much as you can, and you can do it on a low budget. Go and see my little budget, the shop little budget. There's 2 things I want to mention before we end our chat. Can I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I go into that?
Absolutely.
The one is the healing crisis. I've got a chapter on the healing crisis. When you start healing yourself, because all these things, bad stuff and pesticides, has been trapped in your body, it now it spews it out into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
And then what you call the healing crisis, you start feeling bad. And this is why everything currently is against people getting themselves better via the right foods, vegan and 70% organic. Because when people then start feeling bad, yeah, they want to run to their GP, and the GP just puts them on medicine. What you need to understand is if you go off meat, dairy, and eggs, and you go on 70% organic, it's like a cup. It's been overflowing, but if you then put if you put the right stuff in, no, it's the opposite. It's like it overflows, and it's that overflow of bad stuff that goes into your body, but it's temporarily. And so if you actually start feeling bad, that's the healing crisis. Your body is getting better. Push through it. It's all these toxins and rubbish being pushed into your body to get out of your body via urine and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is nutritionists talk about 6 things that I've already mentioned: minerals, vitamins, water, carbs, fats, and proteins. I want to add pH. pH is like the conductor of the orchestra. You cannot absorb iodine properly unless your pH is very close to 7.365 pH.
Okay.
So if you have thyroid, or what's this thing, disease that people got thyroids, you need to get your pH correct. Otherwise, you're never going to absorb. People with thyroid issues, I forget what they call it, have got 2 issues. The first, you have to go off table salt because table salt, they put iodine back. I don't want to go into that discussion because it'll take 5 minutes, and then they put a non-nature-made iodine back. So first of all, the iodine in table salt is terrible. You have to go on sea salt, Himalayan salt, and cut out all table salt. The second thing is you have to get your pH correct. Otherwise, you're not going to absorb the iodine. So it's even more important. Now, the other 4 or 6 things I've mentioned, let's just go through. Protein. The pH nutritionist agrees with me. Protein is a complete myth. They always say meat, dairy, and egg is all about protein. Say a cow that they feed a lot of stuff to. If they feed a lot of rubbish to them, steroids and stuff, you end up eating steroids mostly, unless it's organic. But even organic is the issue because of the pH. So, but that calf in nature eats plants. When you go vegan fish, you're just going directly to the plants to eat the plants. Oh, before I forget, this is where vegans get it wrong. They eat soy and tofu. It's really bad stuff. Please don't go for soy and tofu. So protein is a complete myth. I tested my body through amino acid tests. I had all the protein in it. Fats. You've got to get, it's a theory of mine. I would love them to push things down my arteries. Stents. The reason people have stents is because the fats clog up the arteries. It's not, a lot of people say it's not the case, but it is the case. If you go into some, if they push things down my arteries, I know there will be no fats. So you've got to get the omegas. Fish eat the bacteria and stuff, and that's where the omegas come from. Carbs. Go spend a little bit more money. Go to the house section of your. Okay, Little won't have a lot. Go to Holland and Barrett's and get yourself bread, even if it doesn't taste so well. That cuts up eggs and milk. And then on carbs, go for rice. You know, a little bit of potatoes, stuff like that. Water. I'm now going to use a structured water device, but just use water normally. Or obviously, if you've got money, don't go for a handheld structured device. Don't go for ionizer. I used to have an ionizer. Vitamins and minerals seem to dance together. So minerals is the most important thing. And currently you're going to get that in seafood because they're in the sea and they're going to get minerals. But hopefully we can resolve that in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. As an evidence-based nutritionist, I would agree. Protein being a myth, I'd probably disagree with that. I've studied numerous times on protein. It's one of the most important macronutrients there is. But I get what you mean. It's like the
no,
idea.
I'm not saying protein is very important.
It's the meat. It's the meat, isn't it? It's the idea that because it can come from. I still get it from a fish, obviously. And I do tend to find a big problem with because obviously in the fitness industry, I'll have a lot of people who want to turn vegetarian, and my biggest gripe on that is, like you said, a lot of them they'll do it, but they don't really know what they're doing, and as a result of that, they're of course in a calorie deficit, right? Because they're cutting out a lot of the meat, which of course is usually higher in saturated fat, which is higher in calories than the other macronutrients. But a lot of them then don't know what to do, so that a lot of them then will turn to soy oil, like you said. But I get a majority of my protein from pulses, kidney beans, cannellini beans, quinoa, loads of different stuff like that. Would you say that the myth in itself is this idea? Do you reckon that's kind of been driven by the farming industry, that it's because if you go to supermarkets, Carl, it's on everything now, right? The manufacturers have really jumped on this, and protein Weetabix, which is £1 more than normal Weetabix, and it only contains 0.1 gram. So do you think that that's an agenda that's kind of been driven for a long time?
Yes. So just before answering that, calories is the burnout rate of things. I've got the definition somewhere in my book.
Well, it's how much water your body can heat up. That's what a calorie is.
Yeah. Now, to me, that whole thing means nothing. So they put all these calories, how much you're going to burn. If you go on a vegan and 7% organic diet, you don't worry about calories. Yeah. You've got to start worrying about putting on weight, not the other way around. So calories goes out of the window completely. Just going back to proteins is very important. I'm not for 1 second saying protein is not important. Right. All I'm saying is that there's this myth that you can only get protein in meat.
Right.
You can get it in fish. You can get it in your pulses, in your kidney beans, in your quinoa, all the things you've mentioned. And I've got a chapter 17 on tests. There's a very cheap, I think I explained it there. I think I sent my urine off, and it then tests your amino acids, and they were all there. That's a protein test, and they were all there. So if anyone is concerned about protein, amino acid tests, and a good nutritionist, from that, you know what happened to me? I went to BioLab I flew over from Dublin to London biolab in the UK 10 years ago. It was £500. Test all my mineral and vitamins, and it showed, because I first went vegan,
Right.
and then I corrected it by going vegan, adding the fish to it, and the things I lacked when I went on the vegan diet. What happened is the mineral acid test. It's like £150 or something, much cheaper. At that stage, it was like £50. A good nutritionist could read from that results what minerals I lacked.
Yeah.
So amino acid test is a fantastic test, because if you can get a good nutritionist, it will tell you whether. So after you go on a vegan diet for 9 months, get an amino acid test. It's cheap, probably like £100 or something now. It tells you if you've got the right amino acids, so the proteins. And secondly, a good nutritionist will tell you if you lack any minerals from that test. It's something I've found that everyone should know. The best test to be done is amino acid test. It's very cheap, but you've got to get yourself a good nutritionist.
Oh, interesting. So, before we come to the end of the show, then, Carl. So, I'm going to plug in for guys listening. I'm going to be putting in the link in the description for the recent book, and I'm also going to be putting in the link for the study that you mentioned as well, and anything else. Where else can everyone find you, Carl? So if my listeners want to go give you a follow, or anywhere else, that they can go to hear a bit more from you and your work.
Yes. So for the to see everything about pH and where you can purchase my book, it's on llnow.info, which you kindly said you'll put in. Yep. And for the asthma study, it is llnow/asthma.
Okay. So I'll be putting those links in the bio so people can have a little look, and also obviously go and get a copy of the Healthspring Code and go and check it out. I will definitely be having a read of that because it's related to me. I accidentally, or well, not accidentally, I knew exactly what I was doing, but I went pescatarian, so to speak, and I felt massive changes in my body. Massive changes. I was going into the fire service, Carl, and a big thing that had already put me off trying was my asthma, right? I just thought, not a chance. There's no chance I'd ever be considered. So about 6 months prior is when I stopped eating meat. And I went through everything. And the last stage was the medical. And I convinced myself, well, this is it. This is the end of the line for me. I won't go any further than this. And I had my peat flow test, okay, on a machine. And the nurse turned around to me and goes, "Yeah, okay, that's all done." And I actually stopped her and went, "What?" Because I was so convinced this is it. My asthma is not going to let me get any further. Now, when I sat down with the physician, he did say, your levels are really what we expect from an asthmatic. And he did say, what's your diet? And I immediately said, well, actually, 6 months ago, I stopped eating red meat and I don't even need to take my blue inhaler anymore. I can't remember the last time I took my blue inhaler, genuinely. So just a little bit of, just a bit of, I guess, my own personal story, yet again confirming the things that you're saying, and the studies that you're doing. I almost feel like I'm living proof of what you're saying works. I may have not gone a bit too deep into why it was happening, but I just knew it was happening. And what I've really found interesting today, listening to yourself, is that kind of makes sense to me now. Why what was happening to me, why that was happening. Do you get what I mean? So it was really refreshing. I think the whole pH stuff is mind blowing because I have studied that sort of thing before, but with the whole minerals, and it really makes sense. I think that the more the world is becoming a bit more, I don't know, maybe it's because of what's going on in the world right now, but I think more people are questioning things a little bit more. I think they're sort of deviating from the narrative a little bit. I've worked with many people, physicians, therapists that are adamant that almost every condition, including cancer, is almost always down to your diet. Always. And you have the leaky gut syndrome, and you have all these different ideologies about it. And of course, modern science, particularly in the UK, will not back it, because it's like, no, it's not recognized by science. But over in America, it's very big. It's very, very big. And I do feel, and I'm hoping that you can get your studies through, and I'm hoping that you can continue this research and take it out to the masses, because like you said, people need to hear this stuff. They need to know it.